Hello and welcome to this Oak Tree English video on the City and Guilds ESOL Speaking and Listening Exam for Level 2. If you find it useful, then please share it with your classmates. In this video, I'm going to tell you how to pass the ESOL Speaking and Listening Exam at Level 2. This is especially for the City and Guilds exam, but it will be relevant for all ESOL oral exams. The exam is in 4 parts, which test listening, giving a talk or presentation, evaluating a presentation, and discussing. We will go through each section, how to prepare, and, crucially, how to pass. So, the listening section is a maximum of 20 minutes long. Within that 20 minutes, you will hear an approximately 3-minute recording and answer 9 to 10 questions about it. 20 minutes long, 3-minute recording, 9 to 10 questions. Those questions will be a mix of multiple choice, multiple answers, detail, and gist. Gist here means the main idea, and it's one of the things you're marked on. You'll hear the recording a maximum of 3 times. When you get your paper, the first thing you should do is analyze the question. Try and work out what sort of answer you should give. Is it a name, a number, a date, an action? Find the gist question. Again, gist means the main meaning. We'll look at this closer on the next slide. Then you'll hear the recording for the first time. This time you should only answer the gist question, which will usually ask about the person speaking or the people they're speaking to. The second time you hear it, you should be able to answer all the questions. But don't panic if you can't, because there is a third chance to listen and check your answers. Finally, you are given time to make sure you've written what you want to. Remember, this is a listening exam, not a writing exam, so you're only expected to write short answers of a few words. Let's look at an example in the public domain from the City and Guilds website. I won't play the audio so your teacher can still make use of the resource, but let's break down what we know about each of these questions. I don't know why I've got a little mini-me in the corner here. He's just copying me. Ignore him if you can. So, the first question. The recording is from a news bulletin, a TV chat show, work interview, or radio program. This is a gist question, and this can be answered on or at the end of the first listen. It's also multiple choice, where one choice is right and the others are wrong. But all will usually be suggested, if not mentioned, at different times in the recording. Otherwise it wouldn't be much of a test, would it? The second question. This one, give the full name of the interviewer, is asking you for a detail. Specifically the full name, that is the first and surname of the interviewer. The third question, what is the weather like? This is asking you for the detail of what the weather is like. Stop me if I get complicated. So the answer will be something like sunny or rainy or misty or foggy or overcast. Question 4, who set up the charity, is asking for 2 answers. Notice the and in the answer space. So it's multiple answers, probably 2 names, but it could be one name and one organization, or it could be two bodies of some description. But it's asking you for 2 answers there. It'll be a 2-mark question. Question 5, what does the interviewee do for a living? This question's asking for a job title. But look, it's also testing that you understand the difference between the interviewer, who asks the question, and the interviewee, who answers them. Okay, very important to get that distinction. We're over halfway through the questions. Let's look at the last 4. Question 6, in this case, is another multiple choice question. As a volunteer, the interviewee is a pig farmer, accountant, web designer, or veterinary nurse. All of these jobs and roles will be mentioned, but only one is right. Notice the tense of the question. Whatever the interviewee did in the past is not relevant. The question is what he does now. As a volunteer, the interviewee is a. Also, it doesn't matter what his employment is. It's asking about his voluntary work. As a volunteer, the interviewee. So it's asking what he does without being paid. Notice little details like that. Be really careful when you're reading the question that you understand exactly what you're listening for. Don't just skim over it. Take time, really understand it. Question 7 is an example of a multiple answers question. You're being asked to listen for 3 functions you can do on the website. Name 3 things you can do on the website. You really must get those 3 things, or you must put 3 answers down, because if you don't, you can't get the full marks. Question 8. Which of the following describes Jason's attitude during the interview? Solemn, obsessive, passionate, or professional? The next question is an example of multiple choice. And notice it's about the attitude in the recording. Notice the type of adjective suggested. Solemn, which is serious, like at a funeral or a wedding. Obsessive, which is when you can only think about one thing. Passionate, which is when you feel very strongly and are animated about the subject, as I feel about grammar. Professional, which is how most people are at work. I haven't mastered that yet, but don't tell my boss. You can sometimes work it out by process of elimination. The last one, question 9, the last one in this particular test, notice this is just an example. This one tests your knowledge of spoken English with discourse markers. So these are little words we use to fill in a silence or give ourselves time to think. They don't always have very much meaning and may just be fillers, but you should be able to recognize these very English sounds. Oh, so, well, sorry? Be clear whose speech you are especially listening to. In this case, it's the interviewer. What discourse marker does the interviewer use? Many students find this section, the listening section of the exam, to be the easiest part. And if you've been able to understand this video, you should be fine. The first speaking activity is 30 minutes long in theory, but this includes about 10 to 15 minutes of speaking and 15 minutes planning. The task is in 2 parts. First, you'll be asked to give some personal details, such as your name, your nationality, and a brief backstory, such as why you're studying English. The second part will be to give a short talk or presentation about a topic that you've been given. The exam will suggest some things you should talk about. Make sure you include everything you're asked for. Let's think about the process in relation to this to a question. So before we do that, here are the assessment criteria. The exam, as part of the exam paper, you'll see a reminder like the one on screen. You'll be assessed on giving information on the topic, or presenting information on the topic, the structure of the presentation, giving information clearly, using correct grammatical structures, pronunciation and intonation, the pace of your presentation, and responding to feedback. There are easy ways to make sure these are achieved. So with presenting information on the topic, make sure that you stick to your subject. Don't start talking about something completely different, even if you know more about it or find it more interesting. That's not your job. Secondly, structure your talk with a beginning, a middle and an end. Everything in life, including life itself, has a beginning, a middle and an end. Or if you prefer, an introduction, a main body and conclusion. There's a rule in presenting. Tell them what you're going to tell them and tell them what you've told them. Try and stick to that. The next one, to communicate clearly, you need to be direct and focused. Your task is to move information from your head to your audience's head via speaking. 4, use correct grammar. And that's a whole topic of a whole other video, which is in my to make pile. But keep watching the channel and hopefully you'll see it soon. Essentially use a range of tenses, past, present and future. And maybe, if you're feeling adventurous, some conditional forms as well. Not just if you're feeling adventurous, please include some conditional forms. And now you probably do this naturally, so just relax and communicate. 5, pronunciation. Pronunciation is making the right sounds. Intonation is about using the right word stress. You should make listening to your language as easy as possible by using standard pronunciation and intonation. If you'd like an example of this, I recommend watching some of the poetry videos on this channel. For example, I have The Highwayman by Alfred Noyes, where I've got the text scrolling down one side of the screen and me reading the text. I have a perfect accent for copying. I speak with it's called received pronunciation. Some people argue that doesn't really exist. I argue it does. So you copying my form of my accent, the way I form my words, is probably going to help you a great deal. So watch some of the poetry videos on this channel and try and copy the sounds. Poetry is an excellent way of learning pronunciation and intonation because if you get it wrong, it's immediately obvious. Next, you are marked on the pace or the speed of your talk. If you talk for less than 5 minutes, you'll lose marks. If you speak for a lot more than 15 minutes, you will also lose marks. There are 2 errors that can happen here. Nerves can make you talk too fast, or paranoia can make you second guess every sentence and thus you talk too slowly. Both of these errors can be helped by relaxing into the experience. All that's really happening is you're going into a room and talking to people who you already know and who are all on your side. This is just what you do when you go to a pub or a church or a social club with your friends. It's just this time you're being marked on it. The last thing that you're marked on is responding to feedback. You will get feedback from your peers, that is the other people in your class, on your presentation, and they will give you suggestions, hopefully constructive suggestions. You are marked on how you respond to that. So for example, if they say, I thought you spoke a little bit too quickly. You could either say, "Oh, why would you say that to me? You evil, evil man! No, I am perfect and you are wrong." Or you can say, "Thank you for that. That's really helpful. I'm aware I have this problem. I will try and watch it more in the future." Which of those do you think you'll be marked highly for? It's also good for humanity. Let's have a look at the question. So the first thing you need to do is read and understand the question. Here is an example question, still taken from the City and Guilds website. I will read this for you because it's quite small on the screen. Activity 2. You have up to 30 minutes to do this activity, not including preparation time. Your presentation should last 10 to 15 minutes. This activity will be recorded. Present information about your local community to a group. Introduce yourself and tell the group about the area where you live, how long you've been living there. Present to the group at least 2 points about any of the following: the community facilities, for example, schools, parks, shopping. What facilities you think every community should have and why. The benefits and challenges of living in your community. Compare the facilities in your country with the facilities in the UK. Notice you are asked to introduce yourself, including how long you have been living, present perfect continuous, in your area, and then talk about the where, how long, what and why of your community. You must try and match your statements to the tense of the question. Make some basic notes, just a few words. Do not write a script, that is, writing every word you're going to say. You don't have time, and it doesn't actually give a good result. I know you imagine it would, but it doesn't. So if you make a mind map or a list of things you could talk about, that will be enough. You're planning, you're not writing a script. At that point, take a deep breath in, hold it, and then breathe out. Many people get most nervous for the least reason about this exam. Talking about yourself is something that comes naturally to most people, so just do it in English. Once in the exam, you'll be asked to introduce yourself. Then you'll be asked to talk for a few minutes about the subject of your exam. If you've planned properly, this shouldn't be a problem. Starting with a formulation like this can help. My name is X, I'm from Y, and I've been living in Rydale for Z years and X days. Today I would like to tell you about my hobby of chicken wrestling. The final stage is answering questions from your audience and especially responding to their evaluation. The key on this one is listening to the tense the question is asked in and responding in the same tense. For example, how many chickens do you wrestle each week? I wrestle 5 chickens every week. How many chickens do you wrestle? I wrestle, present simple. How many did you wrestle last year? Past tense. Last year I wrestled 500 chickens. How long have you been wrestling chickens? Notice the present perfect there. How long have you been? Present perfect continuous. I have been wrestling chickens for 3 years. Your peers will then, that is your classmates, will then evaluate your presentation and tell you some good things and some constructive criticism. Please accept this in the way it is intended. You are not being attacked. They are trying to help you. Remember that correction leads to perfection. Activity 3 is unique to level 2. but not to life. If you've progressed to university or to professional presentations, this will be a skill which is expected of you all the time. You can practice this by watching Oak Tree English YouTube videos. Other YouTube channels are also available. And filling in a sheet like the one on screen, your teacher can provide you with these, or you can download them from the City and Guilds website. You receive 1 mark for completing each area: actively listening, giving positive verbal feedback, giving 1 area for improvement, and verbally providing constructive criticism. Please be careful with this. You're aiming to help your colleague, not to attack them. If you see an area that was poor, such as pronunciation, you can phrase it in a constructive way. Have you tried opening your mouth more when you speak? Or, I found that my pronunciation improved a lot by watching Oak Tree English poem videos and copying the extremely good-looking reader's accent. Thank you very much. It's kind of you to notice. And intonation. Would that be something you might enjoy? So here it's important to remember you are marked on active listening. That is, you're leaning forward, you're making eye contact, and you are clearly responding to what they have said. You're marked on giving positive verbal feedback. That is what went well in the presentation. So you make a note, say 2 things that you thought were really good about the presentation. Now that could be pronunciation, or it could be a use of a particular word or a line of argumentation. Just say something that is good about the presentation. Hopefully that shouldn't be too hard to find. You should also try and give 1 area for improvement. I suggested pronunciation, but it could be the structure of it, or of the presentation, or it could be how well the presenter interacted with the audience. Did they make eye contact, for example? And you also need to tell the presenter what you've noticed. So verbally provide constructive criticism. Again, be gentle. Be gentle. The final part of the speaking exam, called Activity 4, is also 30 minutes in theory. In practice, your 15-minute planning phase will take place at the same time as your speaking to communicate planning stage. Look, please don't forget to plan. That's the most common way people fail in this exam. You will have a 10 to 15-minute discussion, usually with a group of 3 to 5 people. Make sure everyone in your group has had a chance to speak. You'll be expected to give 2 points and ask 2 questions, as well as give your own point of view. You must also cover all the points you are asked to speak about. Let's look at what's expected of you. Here we go again. The exam paper itself very kindly tells you what you should do. You'll be marked on being actively involved in the discussion by talking about related topics. Don't go off topic, and don't contradict your classmates too much. You can certainly do so in order to create discussion points, but make sure your discussion stays on topic. Secondly, giving information. Interestingly, it doesn't have to be accurate information, but it must be on topic. If you're talking about statistics, you can say that 83.5% of all statistics are made up on the spot, like this one. It's the function that you're being tested on, the function of giving information, not the accuracy of the information. Asking and responding to questions on the topic. Both functions must be demonstrated. Fourthly, you're marked on your grammar. After all, This is an ESOL exam. Fifthly, you are marked on making English sounds. If you know you sound different than your English friends and neighbours, try and work out why. What part of the way you speak is accent, and what part of the way you speak is something that needs to be corrected. You need to work that out yourself. The sixth point, you must speak clearly. Uncover your mouth. Speak slowly and deliberately. Uncover your mouth. Speak slowly and deliberately. If your mouth is covered, uncover it. Unless there's a particular reason for wearing a mask or something like that, make sure you're not mumbling and that nothing is stopping the sound coming from here to your listener's ear. There's no point in showing how fast you can speak if you can't be understood, so take it slow, make it deliberate. Seventhly, and finally, you're marked on appropriate body language and expressions. This is, you make eye contact with your group. You lean in to show you're interested in what you're saying. You keep your arms uncrossed and receptive to information, and you respond to what they're saying. Now, a lot of this probably sounds like common sense to most of you, but you sometimes find someone who doesn't have the social skills to know these basic rules of engagement. So for you, please consciously think about these things because they are being marked. Let's look at a question, shall we? Oh, good idea. Let's do that. Okay, that's what we'll do. So the question will look something like this. There it is. Notice you're being asked to take part in a discussion. I'll read the question for you. Activity 4, you have up to 30 minutes to do this activity. Take part in a discussion about volunteering. Talk about any voluntary work you have done, your opinions on volunteering, the benefits of volunteering, the challenges of volunteering, voluntary work you would like to do. If you don't know what voluntary work is, then I suggest you find that out before the exam starts. You will have access to this question before the exam starts, so you should be able to find out anything that's really tricky. You're being asked to take part in a discussion, which means you must speak, listen and ask. You're marked on all these things: speak, listen and ask. Before you go into the exam room, you must make notes. Again, just a few words to keep you on track. You don't have time for a script, and a script will totally not help in a discussion because you don't know what the other people are going to say and you have to respond to them. Include in your notes what you will say, points that you want to get across, and what you will ask. You can write the actual questions. If you get stuck and aren't sure what to write in your plan, go back to thinking about your question words. So make notes, say what you'll say, and write what you'll ask. You can go back to thinking about your question words: why, when, where, what, and who. You should be able to answer all of these questions, as well as ask what your group's opinion is of the topic. Please be careful to keep talking about the topic of your exam and not go off on tangents. That is, talk about whatever it is you are most interested in, instead of what you're supposed to be discussing. If you work and study hard, you should be able to pass this exam. If, for any reason, you don't pass this exam, then there'll be another chance later in the year, so don't cry about it. I wish you very good luck and good planning. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If so, please remember to like, share and subscribe.